Hello, Elementary Project-Based Learning Group. My name is Ruth Ann Lane, and you are on the Elementary Project-Based Learning page. Today, for our live, we are going to be talking about groups and collaboration. I'm really excited about today's topic, and I'm actually using a new platform because I really wanted to try and share with you my screen. Without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and just dive into what these elements look like as you're building them. When we build a classroom environment, group work and collaboration is one of the first ways that we can integrate some of those project-based learning milestones, or not milestones, but building blocks. And as we're building that group work, that collaboration, that classroom culture we are establishing skills that our students are going to take with them into their first project-based learning unit. So even if you are not doing your first project-based learning unit until maybe even the spring, this is actually a opportunity for you to kind of dive into some of those elements of project-based learning. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and start talking about group work and collaboration. Maybe you already have a few skills that you use maybe at the beginning of the year to introduce group work and collaboration into your classroom. If you have something that I don't mention today or that just popped into your head now, drop it in the comments, and we would love to hear what it is that you use for group work and collaboration in your classroom. So some of my very first tips, especially for anyone who may be new to teaching this year, not just new to PBL, but new to teaching, before you begin any journey with your students this year, one of the first things that you should probably do is to create classroom norms. So to talk with your students about what the rules or procedures for your classroom are and establishing those and getting their buy-in with that, asking them for their ideas for what would create good classroom rules and norms. And if you've never done this with students before, I really recommend that you narrow that down between 3 and 5 rules, so to speak, with your students. I am going to try to screen share. I'm a little bit nervous. This is the first time I've done this. Okay, try to screen share with you. Yay, okay. I have created a playlist that has tons of videos. I have 11 right now. I'm going to add more as we go too. If you have a video that you think is really helpful about grouping, cooperative learning, and just building classroom culture and creating norms, feel free to drop that link in the comments and I'll add it to the playlist. But there is a video in here that talks about building and fostering belonging with classroom norms. I believe it's from Edutopia. It's a fantastic video. It kind of walks you through the idea of classroom norms, what they are, and then how to kind of establish that. And then there's a second one that talks about what a social contract is. I'm going to get into that a little bit in a minute, but I really think that this fostering belonging with classroom norms is a great video. If you have never created classroom norms before and this video is not enough for you, maybe you need more step-by-step. Let me drop this link in the comments real quick before I get too far. Okay. If this is not enough for you and you want more opportunities to create classroom norms, I encourage you to go to the School Reform Initiative's website. If you click on protocols, if your internet isn't running as slowly as mine, there we go. I always immediately, I don't mess with this giant list because if you scroll down on the School Reform Initiative, what does that mean to me? Nothing. There's a million things there. But if I click on protocols by tag, this is where I search when I'm lesson planning. When I do things for co-op now, and then when I do things with my teachers when I'm coaching them, this is where I go. So if you scroll down, there are a bunch of great opportunities for where to go, but you can see here that there's community building ones. There are ones about team building. So as you're going, classroom practices, choosing a protocol, collaboration, norms. So this is the one that I wanted to show you. If you click on this, there are several protocols that you can look at and use to help you establish norms with your classroom. And I'm going to drop that in our link as well. There we go. All right, I'm going to stop sharing for a minute, come back to you. Hopefully this is working. I'm really nervous. Okay, so hopefully those were kind of helpful in establishing those classroom norms. That's the first thing that you want to do. Even if you have been teaching for 30 years, hopefully one of those resources was kind of helpful, or you might find something new that you could try when establishing classroom norms. But if you have been teaching for 30 years and you're watching this and you have a great suggestion for classroom norms, we would love to hear it in the comments. Please share your wisdom with us. Okay, my next suggestion. Now let's say, week 1 is over. We've talked about our classroom norms. We've established those protocols. If you're in kindergarten, your kiddos know when to use the restroom or know how to ask you to use the restroom. And bless your heart, you've probably already had 10 accidents, or hopefully not. So hopefully, week 1 is over. Now let's get into some of that group building. What are we going to do with our students, and how are they going to react and act to each other in groups? Now, some of those same resources that I linked, that YouTube channel talks about building those social contracts and what a contract is. I've talked about this a lot in my cooperative learning video, which I put in that YouTube playlist as well, but I really believe strongly in creating group contracts with your students and having them create their own norms for their groups. So even if that is, we're going to take the opportunity in week 2 to do a STEM challenge. I love STEM challenges for establishing group norms and teaching my students how to act with each other in a small group setting. STEM challenges are fantastic for that. They're amazing. Or maybe we're going to do a small research report or a small project, not a PBL unit, but just maybe a small project. And my students are going to create social contracts. They're going to create roles for themselves. I'm going to use one of my products as an example so you can kind of see what that might look like. I'll drop the link for it, but I just kind of wanted to show you because I already had it created. So I'm going to kind of show you what that looks like for groups and how you can establish roles. So this is one where you give students, it's digital, but you can also talk about it and create a PowerPoint or whatever for your kiddos. So the general idea is you give them the guidelines. So if you're doing a STEM challenge, I'm going to give them their challenge, and then I'm going to give them, the restrictions of that challenge, what materials they might have to use, what my expectations are when they're done. And then they can establish their norms. Now, I like to make sure that I model this for my students. So maybe that is a video where you model what establishing norms looks like, or maybe it is you pulling students up to the front and modeling that with them whole group. And maybe we're going to model what it looks like to establish norms. Students need an opportunity and a place to write their norms. Now, in the classroom, if I'm using a digital product like this and my students are hybrid or they're in the classroom and I'm just using a digital tool for them to track their thoughts and learning, I would print this slide off and I would put it inside a slip cover on a bulletin board in our classroom, and then pull it out anytime my students want to need to revisit it because they're maybe having conflict or maybe they're not following their norms, and then have them go back to that and recreate it and then put it back in and store it so that they can see that. But making sure that they sign it to show that ownership. Now you can give roles. If you just go on like Pinterest or whatever, you can find roles where students talk about their specific tasks, but I give tasks to my students already created. I do have resources where you can do that yourself, like create your own jobs, but I think that it's important for students to know what is expected of them, especially starting off. So if you have even older elementary students, I would say for your first job where you're encouraging them to do roles, to model what roles expectations look like and what your expectations are when it comes to that, because later on, if you have them create their own roles and they have some background knowledge in that, it will really help them. And special note for my PBL facilitators who are in a school where you do PBL throughout the entire school, I would really encourage you to still do that, because you will probably have at least one student who is new. And it's really important for them to have some background knowledge that's similar to their peers, because otherwise they won't be able to contribute the same. So allowing students the opportunity to see what those expectations are if they're new, and especially because sometimes things vary from teacher to teacher, even if we're all following kind of the same protocols and the same ideas. Sometimes we still have variations and different ideas. So it's good to give students an opportunity to kind of see what those are. So I highly recommend giving pre-created roles for that very first group project that you ask them to do, group activity, where they would have roles. All right, then I also think it's really important to establish partner norms. And I know that's kind of strange, but in that playlist that I referred to, I have a link to like a Kagan workshop or a Kagan video. It talks about A-B partners. I really think that establishing norms for when you're working with partners is also very important. And I think partner norms tend to be different facilitator to facilitator. How are you going to get your students to come back? How are your students going to pick their partners? How are you going to make sure that each partner gets an opportunity to speak? And how are you going to have them pick which partner presents their ideas either to a larger group or to the whole class? So these are all norms that you can establish before you start breaking your kiddos up into partners. But I think partner collaboration is very important, and that cooperative learning strategy, the cooperative learning strategies that require partners, it's important for them to have those norms for partner work ahead of time. So I'm going to kind of segue into what I did for my students to pick partners. In my first grade classroom, I would play a song. And during that song, my students had, it was bippity boppity boo. It was about 20 seconds to find a partner. So before I even played the song, I had my students practice standing up, pushing in their chairs, making eye contact with someone in the room, not talking, not moving, just making eye contact with someone in the room, and then walking to that person. Then they held that person's hand and they came to the carpet as partners, where we would do whole group lessons, and I would read with them and ask them questions to share with their partner or different things like that. This got them learning how to find partners. And then we also talked about what happens if you're the last person. What happens if you think you make eye contact with someone and they're really looking at somebody else? Those are all things to establish and discuss with your students. And then we would practice, and we would practice, and we would practice, and we would practice. And throughout the year, if we didn't follow our norms, we would stop and freeze and go back to our seats and practice again. So I really encourage you to establish partner norms with your students to incorporate cooperative learning before you get to that PBL unit, because then they can have very deep, meaningful conversations about those knows and need to knows before you, or with procedures that you've already put into place at the beginning of the year. All right, and finally, I've said it once, I've said it a million times. If you are in a project-based learning classroom, you need to have conflict resolution strategies for your classroom, and they need to be posted somewhere. I don't care if your kids are 13, I don't care if they're 4. You need to teach them conflict resolution strategies and have them present. I think that this is really important to the success of a project-based learning classroom. Even if you have like a classroom that's just jiving this year and they're just doing great, it's just really important that they have skills given to them and strategies given to them that help them to establish a resolution to any conflict that may come up, because every human being experiences conflict, and it's really important for them to know how they can know how they can resolve that conflict. I've told you in the past that I think that your guidance counselor, if you have one in your classroom, if you don't, I know that a lot of people don't, but if you do have a guidance counselor in your school, I really recommend bringing them in and talking with them about conflict resolution strategies that they would recommend, and even maybe having them come in and teach lessons to your kiddos to teach them those conflict resolution strategies. This is maybe your first opportunity to incorporate a community partner for your classroom as well. So those are my recommendations for the importance of establishing group work and collaboration starting off. I've talked with you a little bit about some of these before, but I've never really gone in as depth, and I've never screen shared before. So I was really excited about that. If you have a resource or a video or something that you would like to share with us about group work and collaboration and how to establish that at the beginning of the year, please drop it in the comments. We would love to hear your thoughts. Also, please make sure that you tune in next Monday. We're going to be talking about messy and loud, how project-based learning can be messy and loud, and what that looks like and what that means as a facilitator. And that will be the last video in this series for us. So I hope that you will join us next Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern. Bye, everyone.